Hello and welcome back. This is our second Coffee with Dan and Dave show, and as promised last week, we are bringing on our first special guest.
Two special
guests.
We lied.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about the new documentary we released on YouTube last week.
Which hopefully by now you have all seen. It's only 4 minutes, so it won't take long out of your day, and it's an amazing 4 minutes. It's a lot of fun, and we're very proud of it. So
this is the first in a series we plan on releasing for years to come. You know, we really enjoyed making this and highlighting one of our favorite artists in the UK, Martin Smith. With that said, we're going to have Martin Smith on the show.
Very exciting.
We're also going to be talking with the director of the piece, Ka-Lok Ho. Ka-Lok has been a member of our team for almost a year now, but we go way back working with
we
Ka-Lok.
first started working with him. I don't know. Maybe we could talk to him about that.
Oh, Dan,
Hello.
Dave. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me,
to the
guys.
show. Thanks for being thanks for being our guest.
Yeah.
I remember watching Coffee with Dan and Dave, I don't know, was it a decade ago? And now I'm honored to be
It was
a
10
special
years, yeah.
guest. I won many decks.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, that was, as we discussed in our last episode, that was now 10 years ago. So
It's funny
Wow,
that you
full
were
circle.
actually one of the viewers. And I
It's-
think I do remember, you winning a bunch of the giveaways.
I do.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I do. I have one of those original Coffee with Dan and Dave posters somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I have it somewhere.
oh, that's amazing. We have one of those hanging. We'll have to show it on the show one time.
Oh, yeah.
Those are cool. So let's dive in and talk about Stories. Stories is the name we've given this series, featuring artists and, well, I mean, it's really, I think we are all artists in general. Let's talk about a little bit about how it came to be, some of our internal dialogues in shaping its form, and
Yeah.
your role as the director of the series. Director,
Yeah, I mean-
editor, DP, writer, all the above.
One-man show.
You really put this entire thing together yourself, so it's remarkable.
Oh, thanks. But I think the origin started, I think you guys mentioned it maybe last week, that, Tangram kind of was a print version of what this was going to be. But I think, at Art of Play, we have grand plans of maybe more than just retail, maybe media.
For sure.
Someday. But yeah, I mean, I've been directing documentaries and this type of video content. It was my bread and butter starting out maybe like 10, 11 years ago now. And I was doing a lot of that. And I remember when we first, I think it was 2015, when we first got in touch. It was pre-Cardistry Con in Berlin.
Right. Well, even before that, you on your own accord made a video for our deck stays.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were like trying to pitch your services to us. It's like
At the time,
sort of
It's like a
hey,
fan-
look
fan
what I can
video.
do. Look what I can do.
Yeah.
So at that time, I think I did that. It was a motion graphics test. That was when I was really testing what I could do in animation, and of course I was already a fan. I had the deck stay, so I wanted to shoot something around it. But what's funny is that it's kind of come full circle, because if you remember that video actually inspired a lot of the shots of the recent Tangram ad that I did.
You're right.
There's
It's
a
very
lot of
similar.
crossover.
Yeah.
I have to send it again to you guys later, but when you watch it, you can see where certain shots were taken from. So when I shot the Tangram ad, I was like, oh, this kind of feels comfortable. I've done this before 8 years
It's
ago.
good to know that I'm not the only one that recycles and regurgitates old work.
I always say that I'm just stealing ideas from myself from the past.
Much more polished, but
But
I
yeah,
think
I
that's
mean-
great. Yeah.
I think Stories just came from, we want to feature more artists and people who we've been rethinking what play means to us lately. And I think there's a lot of artists that we work with, that we collaborate with, that share all of those values of play, of exploring the curiosity. And especially for this first episode, I think Martin ticks all of those boxes.
You know, we talked about this early on as we were planning out the series, but Martin is a very, you know, colorful and eccentric human with incredibly playful machines. Did that inspire the sort of way you went about filming the little documentary?
Initially, the plan wasn't to sit him down for a sit down talking head style, but there was so much to show that there were certain bits where I just knew we needed to capture some interview of him talking. But
Yeah.
as you see in the doc, there's lots of him walking around, demonstrating this, demonstrating that, and none of this was necessarily me going, "Oh, can you show me this?" It was so organic on the spot, where he would be like, "Oh,
Wow.
this came from this thing," so he would run to the shelf and grab something else, and that I think you can see in some of the shots where I am trying to capture everything. Where I honestly, I was a bit nervous that day because there's so much to shoot that I was worried that I wouldn't end up capturing all of it. But how colourful he was, what he wore that day just matched the entire set. How the film was a little bit blue, but he contrasted with that yellow sweater that he has. Walking into his studio, I think it's so unassuming that because when you go in, it's through a little door, and you go upstairs, and you think it's just this one room. Then he opens another door, and that's the studio where he has his lathe and all his tools. And then he opens another door, and now it's a welding setup. But then he reveals that actually there's a trap door that goes downstairs, and he can bring his steel trees through. So trying to capture that space was a little tricky, but I think it was more important to show his personality and who he was. So I kind of let Martin inform it.
Yeah, I mean, you pulled it off. Like, it really leaves you wanting to know more. And you mentioned to us privately that there was an original 10-minute cut. I can't wait to watch that.
There's so much that was
his studio and his workshop just looks like a dream. I'm jealous. I would love to have something like that one day when I can just retire and make cool shit all day long.
I think Martin is living the dream, but I think we're gonna have to ask him about. We'll have to ask him about some of the stuff that was cut out of the doc.
Let's bring Martin on. We gathered a number of questions from YouTube, and we've assembled a few of our own. So let's bring him on and have a discussion. It was so exciting for us to premiere the first in a series of short documentaries, and it's an honor for us to showcase you and your work in our pilot episode. So first and foremost, we just wanted to say thank you for trusting us.
It was great fun. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having trusted me as well. Thanks for coming to visit virtually and in real life. You know, it's great. We had a great day, didn't we, Ka-Lok?
Yeah, I could have spent even more time there. I remember saying to you, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to be a short shoot. It'll be like 4 hours," and I'm pretty sure we spent 7 hours there.
On the way out the door, Ka-Lok saw some other things. I went, "Oh, I didn't even show you that." We didn't even go there. You know, there's.
I believe it. It seems like you've collected a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's the kind of worry as well, that one day you'll have to leave, isn't it? I've been in this actual the floor of this space 9 years, I think. And I've been in the building for 18 years now. I have 2 floors. It's an old textile warehouse near the train station. So it's really quite a beautiful building, really old. So I've had 2 floors in this building, and then at the end of this year I'm getting a 3rd floor, so we'll have an even bigger space. So I think we're going to move onto the ground floor.
Wow.
Because you won't believe the amount of stupid heavy things I carry up and down the stairs.
I can imagine. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
From all the questions we received, there were a couple in particular that came up a lot, just to satisfy the viewer, since quite a few of them asked the same question. The first one being, how did you get into making these machines? It's a little bit of background. For example, what was your first machine, and where did the idea come from?
Typical questions you get asked, but you never really have an answer for them. You know, it's interesting. I mean, I've always been one of those I was always one of those kids that was taking things to bits, and I'm guessing that you guys were as well, and probably the people who are
Taking
interested in what you
apart
do.
electronics,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
RC cars.
Yeah, and then trying to put them back together, or maybe not putting them back together properly, so hacking them a little bit, and that was interesting. And then I went, I went through art college, and art college I became interested in animation, but didn't really want to be an animator. I wanted to tell stories, so this sort of seemed like a really good way, just making very simple little narratives, really quick little narratives where you could turn a handle, and then that grew. I mean, I think one of the first things I ever made that was all sort of still exists in a way was the little Flapping Birds. So I do a series of Flapping Birds now.
Oh, those are so cool.
So, and the complexity grows and grows, but that was it. I mean, as a kid, I was collecting, I was playing with toys, collecting toys, but like all kids, I just managed to stay being a kid, I suppose, in the sense I can come in and make whatever I want. I mean, I'm training my daughter at the moment. She's doing a degree in metalwork and jewellery, and she's here a lot of the time. She's got a studio with me now, and she's working at the same time. And I've sort of keep saying to her, don't let other people decide what you're going to do. It's up to you. You can decide what you do. You turn up here, and each day, and it's you write the piece of paper. You write the brief to yourself, so you can be as playful as you want. You can be as serious as you want. It's you're self-directed completely.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
Wow. Yeah.
You're a good dad.
Yeah. Seriously.
well,
That's good advice.
I've seen some of Nova, Martin's daughter's work, and I'm sure that one day we will feature her in some way because it's just as fun, just as quirky,
she's going to
but in
just
its
cruise
own
on
way.
past me, isn't she? Yeah, it's like, see you later, Dad. Yeah.
I can see that. I can see some kinetic jewelry and.
Oh, what's interesting?
It'd be really cool.
Yeah, what's interesting, Dan, is she's working in silver, so she's making things in silver that are kinetic. So
Wow.
kind of.
I can't wait to see some of that stuff.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty. Yeah, I mean, she's got another year to go yet, but it's pretty amazing already.
I mean, you mentioned you went to school to study animation, and it ended up not being what you wanted to pursue.
No, I went to art college, and but I was interested in
okay.
animation. But I realised I was
Yeah.
interested in the sort of making of the props. I wasn't interested in running the film, making films, and the making of
Gotcha.
props. But then I could still, with those props, I could make very, very simple, like 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds narratives, which had a character could do something powered by cams and levers, and then give you a punchline. So it wasn't like an animation film. I was interested in people like the brothers Quay and Jan Schwankmeyer, Eastern European animation, quite dark, as well as things like Aardman animation, with kind of Wallace and Gromit, that sort of thing. Which,
Yeah.
after watching the film you made of me, I feel like I've turned into Wallace. That's the only thing. It's like- yeah.
We just need a quick
That's
impression of you
hilarious.
going, "Oh no!" like Wallace.
Yeah. Jeez.
Wow.
No, I mean that makes sense to me. Your work is like it really comes alive, and to me it tells a story, and so I think that's still there, at the heart of your work.
Well, your daughter is clearly inspired by you. So, who or what inspires you, and
Oof.
in the past and currently,
Yeah, I mean, some of the sort of the great kinetic artists, obviously, but then you like Alexander Calder or Jean Tanguy. There's kind of obvious ones, but then also some really kind of obscure British toy makers from the 1970s, like people like Sam Smith. My boy's called Sam as well, so he's a Sam Smith. And animation, storytelling, children's books, all these things. So it wasn't. But then another thing where you kind of somebody you look up to, but when you're doing what I'm doing, there's no kind of well-trodden path where you can say, okay, that's what you do to become successful. You get on your train or your bus of your career, and you have to stay on it and just keep going. And there's nobody where saying, okay, at age 30 you'll be doing this, age 35 you'll be doing this. No, you guys probably know exactly the same. No. So you have to. It's like the research, it's like the big swimming pool of research I have. It's all sucked from all sorts of places and added to all the time. It's the same with other creatives in my field, I suppose. It's really difficult to sort of reference them. And there's some references on the walls, from people long dead, but you've got to be careful that you don't end up aping them or mimicking their work and making versions, sort of parodies of what they did. You think, okay, I have this thing where when I'm in the middle of developing new work, I desperately don't try and go to see exhibitions of anything, because it's like it seeps in there. but
Yeah.
not in a good way, maybe in a too literal way that you then regurgitate other people's ideas without realizing that they're other people's ideas, and you think, oh, I've had this work's gone in a really interesting idea. So then in downtime away from things, you might go see a lot of exhibitions, or go see or watch films. No, I mean, say I watch a lot of films. Yeah, so so sort of heroes, design creative heroes. I suppose it's things like Bauhaus as well. German Bauhaus.
We share a lot of common. We're also
Yeah.
huge fans of Calder. We study all the great furniture makers.
About
And,
house design.
yeah.
Yeah, I
That was
mean,
an
I think
influence.
me and Dan had a conversation last year about Eames,
Mm.
about their solo do nothing machine. I mean, that is one of those things that I think you see this film of this machine that they made for Alco, and it's like the most magical thing ever. And you hold it in your head forever. This
Yeah.
little solar powered aluminium solo do nothing machine, but you think, okay, you can't copy it. You can't, because it exists already. What's the point in copying it? But you use it as a stepping stone in your work. And it's so that one thing they did was a massive influence as well.
Your giant tree installations definitely remind me of some of Calder's kinetic sculptures for sure. But yeah, that's great.
How about Rube Goldberg? Were you ever
Never
inspired by
completely unaware of him until
illustrations?
I was a student. To be honest, that's an
Yeah.
American sort of ism.
Yeah.
Over here we had Heath Robinson. I guess it's a similar thing. He was
Okay.
an
Yeah, I'm not
illustrator.
familiar.
But I think Rube Goldberg maybe made some of his. Did they make? Were they made or were they just drawn?
I know other people have
Other people have
attempted to make
definitely
them.
made
Yeah.
a lot
So-
of his drawings in real life, which are
Yeah.
incredible.
So over here there was Heath Robinson was an illustrator who'd make crazy contrapts like that. But then there was a real guy called Roland Emmett. I don't know if you will be aware of him if you've ever watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He made all the
Oh yeah.
props in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, so all the
Wow.
Toot Sweet Machine, the Hoover, the self-rocking chair, that sort of thing. All those were made by him. So they
That's
were a big
cool.
influence, in fact, because
Yeah.
not far from where I live, there's a collection. There's only 3 collections. I think one's in Toronto, one's in Leeds, near where I am. I don't know where the other one is of these machines, and they're out on show quite often in this sort of shopping centre. So they're always like, wow, these again. Little things you see when you're younger, and they're just staying with you all the time. I mean, we actually visit them. It's next door to a record store that we go to as well, so we go visit them. Me and my child, me and my boy.
So what does your creative process look like? Where do you begin, and
Oof.
how do you know you're finished?
Well, they
Are
never
you
are.
ever finished?
They never are. And
Right.
I mean, it's funny today. I'm currently working on a project for the Natural History Museum in London for their gardens,
awesome.
and I've been putting it off for about a month. I had to start the drawings, and it's funny because quite often the works just run on after each other. One work, there's usually about 5 projects at a time in the studio, and that could be things that are already in production, new works, projects. So at the moment in the studio, there's some fingers that we're making. An applause machine batch was just finished. I'm just finishing a really, really tall tree for a village in Cheshire in the UK. And then I'm doing this project for the Natural History Museum. That's the hard bit, that bit where you've got a blank piece of paper and you've got to start. So that I've only started it this afternoon. I actually started drawing it out this afternoon and sort of maquetting it out on the table next door. And so that's the process. And it's funny, even I taught design for a few years, and even I don't, and I understand design process. I should teach design process, but I don't always understand my own design process because it's the applause machine might sort of inform another applause machine, or a part of that applause machine might inform a different piece altogether, so things get pulled from different places. Again, my daughter having to using sketchbooks, having to present designs to her staff, it's like, oh, I don't do that anymore. I don't, because I keep sketchbooks, but my sketchbooks are just a series of writings and notes, and and the sketchbook in a way is on the wall in the studio. It's collections of objects and colours
Yeah. Your
and shapes.
studio is your sketchbook.
Yeah, so it's all here around me, and I mean for this, one of the pieces I'm doing for the Natural History Museum is about worms. My usual subject. I've never done anything about, but quite quickly you're pulling old bits of work off the shelf and sort of mashing them together. So it's back to almost like what we talked about at the start about taking toys to bits and seeing how they worked and then putting them back in different ways. But that will be what they get. That's just helping me visualize it and understand what I've got to do and kind of find the angle. And hopefully my work's so full of layers that I've forgotten why I do something a certain shape or some certain colour. If I really sit and analyse it, somebody asked me, applause machines had the arms that shape. I mean, and it was like, it took me a while. It's like, oh, it's because when I was the first ones I made, I was trying to get a curve, and I had a WD-40 can, do you know, the 3-in-1 oil sort of, and
Yeah.
and an old Hoover wheel off a Hoover, and that's the bottom curve, and that's the top curve, and there was no CAD involved. It was literally tweaking, playing with materials in front of me. You know, yeah. So that's the design process, I'm afraid.
No,
Yeah.
we love that because
Yeah.
that embodies play. There's no
Yeah.
like system or structure. It's use what you have, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, I used to try and take. I haven't been able to do it for a few years. I used to try and take the whole month of January off to sort of set the agenda for the year about sort of what works I wanted to make, and that was just that was kind of my ideal time. I could think, okay, I've got some time just to sit there with paper, cards, scissors. Literally, it's like being a child. Glue, and make maquettes, and then it moves into wire and little bits of aluminium quite quickly, and then spray paint, and just make some maquettes. And that's where a lot of the pieces that you guys now sell, that's where they came from. The last session of that. It feels like I'm getting sort of itchy, and I feel like there's another session that I've got to come in the next couple of years where I've got to just think, okay, I need to just go off on a slightly different tangent somewhere.
Oh, in the documentary, something that you said that resonated with all of us here was this idea of a play day. And I know we spoke about it quite in depth on the day that I didn't include the entire thing in the doc. But since you mentioned you blocked out like a whole month of time off, could you just tell us a bit about how you schedule your week and this idea of play day? Because honestly, it's something that I think we are trying to do ourselves.
It's funny because you guys come to film it, and then somebody else has been asking me. And I've done a few lectures over the pandemic with different art institutions around the world, and it ends up coming up. And yeah, I feel like I'm on the spectrum somewhere. Like I have this, but I realise actually I make machines, and my machines are true machines. But maybe I work a little bit like I like a little bit of order, even though it's chaos in here. But I like a bit of order. So Monday is my manufacturing day. This is what Ka-Lok's sort of angling at, and I use Monday. Years ago, I used to use up to 11 o'clock every morning as a way of getting started on the work. So I'd start 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd make things that I knew how to make. So Monday's that day now. On Monday, I make things that I know how to make. So whether that be applause machines, or the fingers for Lake Inland, or heart beaters, or even just parts for those machines, and that sort of gets me back into the studio after the weekend, even though I might well have been here over the weekend working.
It's kind of like a warm up.
Yeah, but it gets physically it gets the table messy, and so it's easier to work. So everything's not put back in its right place, and your brain can sort of process what you've got to do for the rest of the week while you're doing work that you know how to make. Because that work involves concentration. You might be on machines, but it doesn't involve creative thinking in terms of I've got to think of a new idea.
Right.
So that and there's lots of results of that. I mean, one of the ones is it warms you up. I mean, also financially it pays for the week. So Monday can quite often pay for the whole week, and there's a reason for that because then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are project days. A project day might be a project for myself, or it might be a commission. And they're the days that can really go wrong. You know, where the client never sees the bits that go wrong. You don't present, and I did all these other ideas that didn't actually physically work, so I can't.
Right.
Please pay me for them. They're not going to pay you for them, so you don't show them. So they're the days where you're sitting, staring at the blank piece of paper, thinking, you're going through your research, and nobody's paying you for those days in a way. So Monday helps to balance the books for the studio, you know. So then hopefully by Monday also warms you up for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, helps you think about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, if you've had a good week, and most of the time it's play day. So Friday is like, okay, you can do what you want. Sometimes that means back to making Monday's work or back to carrying on with the project if it's going really well. But it also means you might go see an exhibition or not if it's the wrong time in my head. Or you might just play. You know, you might just sort through your Star Wars figures. It's as simple as that, you know.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, what does that look like? What do you often find yourself doing, or is it just completely random? And
It usually involves cake, so we have a thing called Cake Friday. So before I was here, I had a studio with a friend, very kindly a friend, and he never charged me for the studio. But I was in the doorway, and I think I was the barrier to the weather for him. But the payment that I had to pick up cake on a Friday and bring it in. That was my payment for my studio fees. So Cake Friday was this thing, and then when I went to teach, I took Cake Friday. I used to teach on Thursday and Friday. I took that with me to teach, and I used to get the students to bake on a Thursday night to bring in Friday for Cake Friday. So we've kind of continued that here as well. That we try to have sort of a bit of a treat, you know. It's just kind of why you want to come to work for fun, don't you? I mean, we are serious. We're making a lot of work for a lot of people. Yeah, so it's yeah. So what it looks like? Oh gosh, it might look like this. No, the kind of pictures, making pictures, drawing. It might look like no, yeah, making. This is a maquette. This is the sort of thing that happens on play days. So wasn't for anybody, but at the time. So it
So
might.
yeah, what
I
is
love this
this?
one.
I don't know.
That's a great answer.
Is it? It's a proposal for a piece of public art, hence the steps so you can get up there. It's also
Okay.
I was making some of these large screens for a hospital for a commission, and they just rotate that way, and all the air currents catch them. But when I was stacking them against the walls in the studio, I found it really interesting when they were sort of bending backwards and starting to disappear, and sort of like invisibility cloaks almost. And I thought, so very quickly at the end of the week, I thought I need to make one of those really quickly. It took days just to have a go see it. So I remember this thing, and it's been I've used it in other pieces, so it's been regurgitated now. I've started to use this idea to sort of twisting and tilting. It's not so different to the spinning heart machine. This idea that you can turn something and tilt it at the same time as well. So it's full of all sorts. So this is the play day. This is the kind of maquettes I want to make. So I make cardboard ones, but I also want to make quite robust ones that will survive. Sometimes small pieces you sort of think, oh god, if I could layer this up 100 times, I've got a really more interesting piece. Or likewise, if you do a very large tree, there might be a section out of that tree. We think there's something really interesting going on there. A lot of things you find that are new that nobody else is doing, or nobody else has done, or I've not done, are the accidents. You know, because a lot of mechanisms are out there mapped and drawn and things like that, but you find something you think, oh, that's unexpected, that's how can I capture that, and that can be a new piece. Now that can go somewhere else, and sometimes you just take it as it is, as a mechanism, like maybe that. Other times you think, okay, what can that be doing? I mean, I don't tend to think like that. I mean, I tend to think of, I've got a conceptual idea like it's a heart that rings, and I'll make a mechanism work to make that heart ring. I won't sort of think, oh, I've got a square cam and a lever, and oh, that'll make a good heart on top. It comes the other way around. It usually comes from the idea. But yeah, the pieces definitely sort of suggest other pieces always, you know.
Wow.
You know, the wishing well that you filmed, and the yellow coin wishing you well. I mean, I think that ultimately it's going to be a table, you know. It's going to be, I think the version of it is heading towards being tables where it's a counter, where like a counter in a bank. That's where the idea of a countertop comes from. You count your money on the top. So I like this idea of hoards and money, and throwing your money in a bowl when you get home from work. Not that anybody has any money anymore. It's all electronic. And then the machine sorts it through you overnight almost, and then in the morning you can dispense your bus fare or your train fare, and off you go. I like this idea that, but in a really silly way, that these things can I don't make utilitarian machines. I make machines that don't need to exist, but I quite like the idea that I can make machines that have got a function, but that function's not really required, you know what I mean? It's not one that we all think, oh, I really wish we had a machine that did that. I think, okay, that's the one that appeals to me.
Have you ever made a machine that had a practical use?
I made a clock for an American company called Kickerland. You guys might be dealt with.
Yeah, we're familiar with Kickerland.
Yeah, so I know Jan, the owner, and so it was interesting because I'd been teaching at art college, and some of my students went on to do product design, but I'm not a product designer. I'm much more a designer maker, sculptor. So I did this because I had to do product design. So, but the only way I could do it was to make them the whole fully formed clock and give it to them, and then it went to China, and they made them in China. But it was a little clock that sort of woke you up with birdsong, but mechanical birdsong, with a little dancing feather to tickle your nose, in theory. So, yeah, so that's the only thing that's sort of practical in the sense that it does tell you the time, and it will wake you up, but in a very hopefully quite joyful, playful way, hopefully.
One of the viewers wants to know if you come up with the idea first and then sort of adapt that to the mechanics, or if you're very much inspired by the mechanics and then find a clever, playful way of transforming those mechanics into one of your machines.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I was just thinking, sort of talking. Yeah, since it's the ideas come first. So it's like form and function, I suppose. They run side by side, but it's definitely the idea, what I'm trying to achieve, and then I know that within a given space, which I could decide as well, I can fit a machine in there, a mechanic, and because my work has got this machine aesthetic as well, it's not trying to be an automata on top of a box where the kinetic part's hidden. It's not trying to
Yeah.
create an illusion.
It's very exposed.
Yeah, it's very deliberately. It's a machine that I know that I've got enough room to sort it out, and I know there's not infinite, but there's a lot of solutions to what I want to do. I mean, to make a hammer hit a bell, I can think of lots of ways to do that.
Do you ever run into roadblocks? Like, if you mentioned the idea comes first, and do you find yourself often limited by the engineering capabilities or the mechanical, theories and options out there?
Yeah,
Are you constantly having to educate yourself in what works and how it works?
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's things but they never get, and you don't kill them off as such. Though you just sit on them, and you find a solution eventually, and that eventually might be 10 years later. Things come back to the studio and I rework them. The Wishing Well you filmed, the original one of that was made in 2005, and it was 4 meters in diameter, external piece, and it worked perfectly to start with. And then there's a lot of heavy weights involved, and then a bit of dust gets in the bearings, and this thing starts to sound like a shopping trolley going down cobbles. It kind of starts to eat. So that only lasted maybe 3 or 4 years in its location. But then I thought I need to still solve this piece. I need to solve what was going wrong with it. So I've been working on the smaller ones in the last couple of years, and that's a gap of maybe 13 or 14 years from one to the next one.
Wow.
So the applause machines are the same. I mean, the applause machines have gone through several cycles of me thinking about how can I improve or improve mechanically them, and then also how can I sort of improve the way they work in the sense of the thinking behind them. So going from just being literally a self-applauding machine where you only worked if you pressed it, then to being a variable speed, and then I've got other ones coming in the future down the pipeline, I think.
I have a question about the feeling that one might have when they experience your machines. Like for us, what drew us to your machines is their magical quality. They seem to evoke like a feeling of magicalness or wonder and curiosity. And I'm just wondering, as a machine that's fully exposed, there's nothing hidden. You can actually see how it's working in front of you, but yet it's still really surprising and magical. I'm wondering if you have ever thought about that, or if you love the idea of exposing something, and then, therefore is it a challenge to inspire those feelings?
I don't know if it's where we are in the age we're at, though. We're all still fascinated by analog mechanical things, aren't we? Even though we're in the computer age, aren't we? And maybe that's why, because we're in the computer age and we don't understand the microchip, because it's just a chip with things etched on it, and it does the same job that analog used to do years ago. No, and I think we still get excited by that, don't we? Even people who are young, who won't have. I mean, I'm really careful. I don't want to make faux Victorian art, and I hate steampunk. Sorry, people who like steampunk. I hate. It's got to have a function. If I'm going to use a brass gear, it's because it needs to be a brass gear. No, I'll use a nylon gear if it's more appropriate because it's silent. No. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm trying to create wonder. These are these difficult questions that people like Ka-Lok have been asking me recently. Like, what? Why do you do this? I do. Well, it puts food on the table. Yeah, I mean, I still make you things that I get excited about. What I want to see, and I want to create wonder. I want to create a bit of magic in terms of, I mean, making a machine that I can say, oh, it's difficult. No, it's like opening. I'm not interested in cars, but I guess it's like when people open the bonnet of a car and see the engine, and they actually start to melt because they see it and they fall in love with it. I like that with little toy machines almost. That's what I get.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I get excited about. I suppose I want to make the machines that if I went to a gallery or a shop or a store and that was there, I would be buying it or trying to acquire it, whatever the cost. I wouldn't be asking them. I'd be like, oh, I need to have that in my life, and which has happened a few times. I've got a few pieces that I've collected over the years, which I have to own, and so that's. I don't know if that answers your question.
In America, we have Penn and Teller. You have Darren Brown. Both have exposed the secrets of magic, and yet their audience is still in bewilderment and mystified and amazed.
I suppose because it still makes it even more amazing
Yeah.
that when you
In
see
a
a
way,
trick,
it does.
yeah, it's 'cause
Yeah,
it's like wow, that's even more clever than I thought it could be. 'Cause
exactly. And I
yeah,
think that has a lot to do with
Yeah, one of the
how we
things, I mean,
experience your machines.
we love your items and all the items we carry is they are magical, but there's no trick to it. Like, you immediately know, and if you don't immediately know, you soon know once you play with it yourself exactly how it works, and yet it's still incredibly magical.
yeah,
So it's not about the trick, it's more about, I guess, the outcome, like what it does, the
yeah.
playfulness, and
Because
yeah.
there were historic automata that were tricks. I mean, have you seen the Turkish chess player?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and that was
Yeah.
a
yeah,
complete fraud, wasn't it? And that there's a there's a story that it inspired the men that then created the Industrial Revolution in the north of England. They saw this in London being presented, and it's a chess playing automaton, but it's not. It's a man underneath that's operating, and he can see. But they went
yeah,
back and were the forefathers of the Industrial Revolution, which is absolutely bonkers if it's true. And it won't be true, but you know, I've got a film I'll send you. uh,
That's
but yeah, so
amazing. I'd love
yeah,
to watch
so
that.
yeah, but I'm kind of all out there. I want it to be all out there, and I still think mechanisms are magical, and it's that again, it's play, isn't it? So I quite often I make pieces that people sit and watch, like a tree that's sort of 6-7 meters tall, but I also make things that people have in their hand, and you'll just catch people just sort of playing, and that's what I'm trying to get to as well, where people just engage with the work, and not in a kind of in an art gallery sense. Ooh, very nice, so much like that. It becomes theirs, and it's a bit more intimate. They can hold it in their hand, or it sits on their desk, and they just, give themselves a round of applause. Nobody else needs to know they've given themselves a round of applause, but they're kind of thinking, yeah, and that's the world I want to be. That's the world I am in anyway. My
I
machines
think
get used all the time here.
I think because it's so exposed, it makes it even more mesmerizing because you see the clapping hands or the beating heart, but then you start following the mechanism down, and you're like, oh, it's because of this piston or this gear, and you're
Yeah.
just there trying to figure it out, even though it's right there in front of you, which makes you spend more time
Yeah,
with your
it's
piece.
cause and effect, isn't it? So we all try to understand. I suppose we're all maybe people who again who are interested in what you do as well is interested in science. I think it's cause and effect. You want to understand why does it do that? What's doing that? And it gives you the chance to think, okay, that's doing that, doing that, doing that. I mean, there's some things in there that people won't understand that I've done, that are just little things that. This is why hopefully mine work, as sometimes other people's don't work. That that people there's some tricks of the trade, if you know what I mean. There's some precision things that. Was it the other half of Lakeland, who's the engineer, calls it the sort of the bit of finesse that I used to have to be involved. Well, I still am. I'm always involved in every single piece that Lakeland makes because we just need that person who understands. There's just that how big to do that hole, and we're a bit more precise than engineers even sometimes. We're dealing on sort of we have drill bits that are like 3.15, rather than just 3 millimeters. Or 3.1 millimeter. We have kind of they'll say on the drill bit it's 3.1, but we know which one's a little bit fatter than the 3.1, but not quite a 3.2, and we're dealing on those because if you get a hole that's just right, the whole thing works perfectly. If the hole's too tight, suddenly you're forcing the thing around, or if it's too slack, you've lost it. It doesn't work, and yeah. So, but definitely Ka-Lok, yeah, cause and effect. I think I catch people drawing my machines sometimes in exhibitions with a little pattern. No, and I think that's really interesting.
fun.
I really like that people are trying to work it out. This is what I did as a student. I would go to other exhibitions and see things and think, oh God, that's working like that, and collecting information.
That's got to be like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah. It's
It really
nice,
is.
isn't it?
You know.
The best one
Yeah.
was my partner's a teacher, and she sometimes takes the work into the school. She's a primary education, so kids who are 9-10 years old, and she brings back drawings where some of them are usually the naughty boys have drawn them, and the drawings are just brilliant because they sort of they do annotated drawings, so they sort of say what's doing what, and they don't get it quite right, which I really like as well. Even they get it a little bit wrong, but I think these are just brilliant drawings, of an applause machine and saying, what happens. It's like, yeah, this is nice. This is getting through to somebody. Not that that's my first objective, but it's really nice when it does get through to people in a different way.
I want you to speak on your experience as a teacher and as a dad because we had a lot of people asking about creative process, which tells us there are a lot of aspiring artists, and I think we are all aspiring artists. And you're someone who has achieved some success internationally. You've made some really beautiful pieces. You're very original. What advice can you leave to someone trying to break in or do something different? And I'm speaking for a friend.
Is that for you, Dan? Oh.
Sure, I'll take it.
Oh God, it's so, again, it's layered, isn't it? It's so layered. You just got to do it, haven't you? I mean, I never thought my children would be. I thought they've always been creative, but we've got this huge studio, and they've been coming here. One of them since he was 2 years old, I guess. No, since he was born. The other one since she was 2 years old. And for years, they just sat on the settees with their iPads, not interested in anything. And then there's something clicked when they were sort of turned 15, 16, and they start to say, "Oh, can you show me how that works? Can you show me how that works?" And now, like the one who's 21 has gone through every machine I've got. She understands how to run every machine. Not that we've got a lot of machines. This is tooling machines like lathes, and the younger one he's 16. He's on his way, I think, here. And I think I was really lucky. I was never told, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. I just found myself different size spaces when I needed them, even if it was a sort of broom cupboard or in a bedroom, and just started making things. And I think I used to have a thing on the wall for a while. I used to say the most important thing is the work. Just do the work. The work's really important. Just making. It's called a creative practice because you're practicing all the time. I think that you need to be practicing.
Nice.
You guys must know that cardistry. It doesn't. You don't sit there thinking. I never sat there waiting for a letter to arrive or a phone to call to happen or now an email where somebody says, "Oh, I want you to do this." That happens, but for years it didn't. So it's like, okay, you've just got to make what your vision is. And there's lots of ways of doing that. I mean, you can set yourself briefs. There's ways into that to do. You can set yourself briefs, or you can have some very self-directed work. All my work is self-directed. It went from being self-directed to being commissioned, where people would give me a brief, to me being back to being self-directed again, where I didn't want to have a brief. But yeah, I always think it's just the making. And when I say making, I mean physically making, and I mean making as in writing stories or notes or drawing, just doing the work. It's like, if you want to do this kind of, I'm going to say professionally, but I know some really good amateurs as well, actually. So, and I know some really shit professionals. So, but if you want to do it, you just got to do it, haven't you? No, it's that you've got to get on with it and just be making it. I mean, I can make automata. I mean, I can't get up because I'm all wired to my computer, but I've got shelves full of things that are made out of card and wire that are ideas for later on that I've still not exhausted yet. So the material things, I don't think it's an excuse. I think you just got to get on with it.
Just do it, like you said. This is your first answer, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
Everyone has this idea in their head of what they idolize and want, but you can't really get there unless you just start somewhere, and it is just all practice. And
yeah,
we're still practicing, and
Yeah, and I think people put barriers up to themselves, and I'm sure I do. I'm sure I've got different barriers where it's like, oh, I haven't got space to operate, and I haven't got the tools and machinery. We think, well, you need a pencil and a paper. Or you need a pair of, for me, I need a pair of pliers and some scissors. And then first pieces I ever made when I was a student were made out of olive oil cans and scrap wood, and these things sold are probably worth quite a bit now, and it's like they didn't cost me anything to make. You find a way, and I quite like that. I quite like restrictions. I quite like obstructions as well. So when I say I don't like a brief where it's got a thematic, but I don't mind obstructions when somebody says you've got this much space, or you've got, or it's got, yeah. I don't know if you know the Lars von Trier 5 Obstructions film. A really interesting film. I like that where he asked Jürgen Leith to remake his Perfect Human, I think, of the film he made in the 1960s, have to remake it with an obstruction each time. And Jürgen Leith, I'm going to send you this guy as well, guys. Jürgen Leith then just makes a better film. And one of them, Kay, you'll love this. One of them is like you can only use a 1 second edit, that's all. So he remakes a version of the film just with 1 second edit. So it's like things like that. And I like obstructions can open up possibilities, that because you've got an edge to push against then, and to sort of say, okay, that's what I've got to do. Right, how do I get around that? I suppose again, all I'm doing all the time is setting myself a problem to solve, and when I've solved that problem, I want to set another problem. And when there's no problems, it's a bit boring. When there's a problem, it's like, oh, right, this is exciting. What can we do? No, and we don't go, oh, it's exciting. We don't do a dance anymore. But no, we get sort of, oh, right, okay, this is something to work on, you know.
Yeah, I think those limitations make us more either resourceful or forces us to sometimes be even more creative. And I think it's like you said, when you have that nice sandbox to play in, and you're not limited by, like you said, a theme, but you have these other limitations, whether it's size, I guess for you, maybe it's time, maybe it's budget, maybe it's even color. You're forced to think of a solution, and I think walking in your studio, I can see all these bits that you reach for to come up with an idea.
Your studio workshop looks like a dream space, and we touched on this earlier. It's expanding. You just fill it with all kinds of stuff. I only know we just got a small glimpse of it. But has that inspired your work? Does filling it with your own work? Do you fill it with other people's work?
Yeah.
You mentioned it's like a sketchbook, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a book a couple of years ago, which was called Sketchbook. It was again to give to students 16 to 18 who were going to and it was to sort of show how people use sketchbooks. And I was like, well, I don't use sketchbooks, and I said, look, it's all on my studio walls. So exactly, that's what we want. We want to show that doesn't have to be only one way. Yeah, studio wise, I mean, I used to work out of a space the sort of size of 2 settees. You know, it's quite a small room. Then I've sort of grown and grown and grown as I've been able to get more space. And the one thing it has done, it enables me to work faster in the sense that you don't ever have to pack anything away, so that I can have the 5 projects happening. I can have really large projects on the go. I mean, like I say, there's the really huge tree that's in the project space at the moment. It also makes you more messy. It also gives you panic attacks, like what happens if I have to move out one day? Where does it all go?
Right.
And It's funny. I mean, when Ka-Lok came, I mean, again, it's an interesting thing. Again, this is all new to me. It's not like I've had it forever, and it's like, oh yeah, works really well. It's super smooth, and it's like I think, God, I didn't even see that anymore. People point things out on the shelves, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and there's bits of old work hanging about. I think sometimes you think, oh, I wish I could just get a skip and just clear the whole place out and start again. But then I think I couldn't. I'm not that kind of person, you know. I couldn't. But so it's been beneficial. But I still believe you could work out of a suitcase on your kitchen table if you had to. You know, you pack it away and you open it up again, and you know, and if you get space, you get space. If not, you know. But it is. I'm very lucky. I know I am.
Yeah, and you've been there for 18 years, or.
Yeah. Very good. I don't own it. I've got a very good landlord.
There's a quote from Austin Kleon that I really like that I think applies to, like, especially your studio, which is, I think he says something like, keep your workplace messy but your tools clean, because then you can spot those connections. And when I, like, during that interview setup, I can see all your tools were laid out perfectly, but then your work is everywhere in the best way possible. And I just love that.
Gosh, yeah, I mean, it's a mess. It is sometimes. But then I don't. Again, maybe I don't see the mess as well, and maybe maybe it's a necessity, isn't it? Because it's like you need the messy desk, and if you tidy your desk up, you think, well, I don't know where anything is now. But when it's a mess, you know what it all is. You know that even if it's a certain invoice is at a certain level in the pile, you know where it is, and
it's an
if you tidy it all
mess.
up, it's like, I've lost it now. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so. Yeah, so I do have space of cleaning up, and we tend to, after a project, we clean the main table and then paint it white again, and then have a fresh start. Because underneath there, at the moment there's the big trees drawn out on the table, and I started drawing out the project for the Natural History Museum earlier, and I thought I'm not really quite ready to paint over the tree yet. So these two pieces are going to be drawn over the top of each other. But it's probably, if you peel back the white paint over years, it's got all the different pieces like the cash machine and the wishing well are drawn on there to scale, so you can actually map it out with metal as you're making it, or wire. So, but yeah, maybe it's important. Yeah, I'm always suspicious when you go to somebody's studio and it's perfect. You know, you think, well, you're not doing any work. You're just tidying. You're just pretending to be an artist with a clean studio, aren't you? You know, it's like, but then, yeah, it's a workspace, isn't it?
I don't want to talk about my desk space.
Good or bad? Is it messy or clean?
Oh, it's a mess.
That's good though. That's what we're thinking. It's good.
It's frustrating though, because I work right beside my wife at home, and her space is always so neat and tidy. And then I'm right next to her, so you see the
You need to be
contrast.
suspicious of her. Suspicious. Clean space.
Now she's like the most organized person I've ever met, and so it makes sense. But I like to think I'm organized, but then I just compare the two spaces, and it just sometimes gives me anxiety.
Yeah. I've still got boxes from when I moved here 18 years ago. I've still got a couple of boxes I've not opened yet from the last studio. So it's like
That's fun. That just
I'm not going to open them.
Keep them sealed. Like
Yeah.
pass them down to your children.
Yeah, it's the kids' problem when I'm dead, isn't it?
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. We thought we would close it out with a rapid fire round. We had some questions we came up with that might be interesting to hear your quick response to. You ready for it?
Okay.
And most of these are one word answers, honestly.
Yeah, quick answers. You referenced the 1 second edit. So in one word, describe your machines.
Fun, I suppose.
I love it.
Yeah.
Your earliest childhood memory of magic or that feeling of amazement.
My childhood memory of magic is my mum was sawn in half on a theatre show.
What?
Yeah. But I wasn't there. But I was told about it when they came home. That was my earliest memory when we were really small, and that was in Germany. So that was before I was 2 or 3. She got a little card, like you were sawn in half, sort of thing.
What is a subject you would like to know more about?
One word answers, you said. One word answers. I think I would go find out. I mean, I'm really interested in physics and why things work. And if I want to know, I go find out. Yeah, prove it.
I
Physics
think
in a real
if you combine some physics with your quirky engineering.
I think that I do. I mean, I sort of have this other mantra, which is like when I'm making like gravity is your friend. I see that to myself all the time. Gravity is my friend. Like, look after it. No, gravity will help me with this. I always think, yeah, what if someone went into space? My machines won't work in space.
All right, last one. Your dream project. If there were no limits, your dream project.
If I want to do, I mean, I'm not sort of excited by scale or sort of where it was taken. If I've got ideas that I'm working on that I'm just going to make, and they're the dreams. They're the ones I think I get excited about. So I'm not sort of excited by somebody saying, "Oh, can you come and make this for us here?" It's like this happens quite often. I was talking to somebody today about a facade for a building in London. It won't happen probably, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's interesting. But I was saying, this is like when Louis Vuitton asked us to make 2 million applause machines in gold, and it's
Wow.
So it's like, it didn't happen because we pulled out. I mean, they didn't want 2 million in the end. They got their numbers wrong. They wanted 200,000. We still couldn't do it, and so that's not exciting. That kind of dream project like that where somebody comes along. I'm not. I mean, in terms of financially, the studio it's absolutely fine, and I'm really. I don't want to sound like I'm not ambitious. We are ambitious for the work, I suppose. Me and my daughter and the people I work with, like with Lakeland, we're ambitious to make work that's really new and unique and clever and sort of magical or inspiring, that sort of thing. Not sort of ambitious to say, I want the work to go sit on a facade in London. That's if it happens, brilliant. But if it's not like, okay, this is necessary. So it's back to what we said about when somebody wants to start. The most important thing is the work. So the work. So yeah, the dreams are kind of what are in my sketchbook at the moment, and they'll come out before long. They'll be made. Worms. That's it. Worms are the future.
I do. I want to know more about worms.
I can't wait to see this
The macroscopic worms. Yeah.
Your next device is a wormhole.
It's exactly, yeah. I know.
See, you have to get into physics.
I made 2 of these. They're wishing wells.
Yeah.
There's 2. I really wanted to make a version where you drop the coin in one and it gets thrown out the other one at the same time. Somewhere else. So you put it in one, it dispenses in the other one.
Can I have the other one in my house?
It's like the illusion in The Prestige.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You just need a duplicate coin.
yeah.
Easy.
Or we make the coins, so the coins come with the piece, and or maybe it's the same. There's just two coins. You just drop one, and it comes out, and then you drop it, and it comes out. So this idea of linking them together.
It was an honor to have you on our first show.
No,
It's an
thanks
honor
for
to have
asking
you on
me,
our
guys.
show, period. The documentary, if you're listening and you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. It's only 4 minutes, but it's an amazing 4 minutes that really captures everything we love about you that we offer on Art of Play, that we've learned about you over the past few months. And so,
There's some
thank you so
amazing
much.
filmmaking and editing by Ka-Lok, I think. He made
Yeah,
it look very, very
absolutely.
magical in here. It doesn't usually look so beautiful and golden as you did it that day.
Oh, it does. It's like Narnia. You open one door and you don't expect there to be so many rooms. As you were taking me around, it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. We didn't go downstairs.
Is
did we?
there?
Nope.
Oh, go ahead.
We'll have to save that for
No,
next time.
Next time.
Is there anything you want to leave the audience we didn't touch on? Maybe you have an exhibition or new items you want to tease.
My trees are frantically getting planted at the moment. So there's three in the UK. I've got an exhibition starting in July, which is in the UK in the north of England. I know, maybe not the audience. Maybe there's somebody listening out there in North Yorkshire.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and it's in a really beautiful museum called the Bose Museum in Barnard Castle, and it's where the Silver Swan is. It's this amazing piece which is 250 years old this year. So it's the magic of the Silver Swan is the exhibition, and this is swan that's a silver life-size swan that when activated bends its neck and then goes down and picks a fish out of the pot, out of the water. And
Wow.
the swan in itself is absolutely amazing, made by Cox 250 years ago, as I say. But the water has been a massive influence on my work, hence I'm in the show. So they've got a wishing well in the show, and some trees outside. But the water is a glass twisted rods, and these things just rotate, and just all these glass rods rotating just look like water rippling. There's swans on this bed of mechanical water, which is, again, when you said about things that inspire you and go, oh. It's things like that, a little bit like that. I go, the swan's amazing. The swan is absolutely amazing. But it's the glass rods that I go, whoa, that's magical. So that's on at the moment, and I've got some trees just about to get launched in America as well, in Connecticut.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
so a gallery in
Fantastic.
Kent.
We need
there,
more of
the
your
Morrison
trees.
Gallery. Yeah,
They're
it's
beautiful.
they're quite large to ship, but you know.
Where can people find you? We'll have a link if you're watching this on YouTube. There'll be a link below. But what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is Smith Automata, which I don't purely make automata, but it's because my name's such a really rare name that obviously it was bought a long time ago. So it's Smith Automata. But yeah, all my socials are the same. I mean, I'm quite active on Instagram. People tell me off because I'm not very active on my website, but they should come to you guys and buy something, and then they'll get all that information. Yeah.
Well, again, thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you so much. This was fun. It's always fun learning about all you do.
Yeah.
You do
That's
a lot.
good. Cheers, guys. That's been
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
again, Martin.
Well, that was fun.
Cool.
I mean, I feel like we have a lot of work to do as far as
Yeah, it's a little
interviewing people.
confusing using this, and then we're filming there. Martin's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, I mean
I just want to talk to him all day long. And he really does have a dream studio. That's so cool.
the dream job. He's living the dream.
Yeah.
You know, when we asked him about his dream project, his life is a dream project.
That's
you know,
so cool.
His kids are now getting into creating their own things and becoming artists of their own. And as a father of two, that's my dream.
That's so cool.
So yeah, it was so awesome to talk to Martin, and we look forward to having more guests on the show. We'll be back again next week, perhaps with another guest.
Yeah, I think we need to stick to the plan and have some sort of guest on every show.
No, I'm really excited
Yeah.
about this series, because as we talk to more of these artists, we're only going to learn more about play for ourselves and expand our own understanding of what play is and what can be done with play in our lives. So
Yeah.
this is really exciting for us, and we're honored to be able to share it with all of you. So hopefully you are getting something out of this as well.
Yeah, if you're watching and maybe you're an artist or a designer or some sort of creative yourself, or maybe you're friends with someone incredible, we'd love to have them on the show. So
Don't hesitate to reach out.
Reach out or
Yeah.
mention them in the comments below, because we do read all of the comments, at least until they get to be obsessive. But right now it's manageable.
Totally.
But thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. See you soon.